He says, there's this little voice, just whispering over your shoulder, you did it, or what about me? And he said, you have to be watchful. Yogananda ji told him, no one is safe. He said, remember, you are not safe till you reach Nirvikalp Samadhi. So we live in times where Samadhi sometimes can seem distant, God can seem distant, and his voice, perhaps it feels like he's forgotten us, forgotten me. I mean, the list is long, is what I'm trying to say. But on the other hand, when we come together like this and on such a blessed weekend as this one and the coming few days and weeks, we have, like Master said, even if there's been one example of somebody who could talk to God, he said, we all are brothers and sisters of that saint, that soul, Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda. And he said, if somebody did it, we can all do it. That is what they were trying to show. And then the question comes, how? So anyway, it's wonderful that you have interest. I hope you have interest. You have not been forced to, nor did you come here for the pizza only. So it's wonderful if we can come together in satsang like this. So what we're going to do is start with some singing and chanting, and you have these papers, and I'll guide you. And really, I'll repeat this tomorrow too. This is really our time, your personal time, or the next 3 days, and don't feel shy. Tomorrow I'll be talking of a subject of Christ consciousness to the degree I have read it, to the degree, some degree I've experienced it, to what Swami and others taught us. So don't feel shy. What is this? How can I experience it? How do I make it practical in my daily life? Any question about anything I say, we are here to serve you, to try our best to address that question, perhaps point you to a book or come back to you with answers. But don't feel, don't go back thinking, now what did he say? The talk was wonderful, but what does it mean? Because when Kriyanandaji asked me to do outreach, I asked him a follow-up question. I said, sir, what aspect of it? Because he wrote extensively. He wrote 150 books on different themes, in some cases totally divergent, different subjects, sociology, monasticism, leadership, and money magnetism, Bhagavad Gita and the Bible. So it seems like he was taking off different tangents. And his answer was very interesting. He said, just make the teachings practical, which is to say, whatever we listen today, how am I practicing it? How can I go deeper in that? And how can, if I'm not able to do, if I'm struggling with an issue or a subject, how can I find an answer? Because Swami Kriyanandaji used to tell us, he said, in my 65 years, this is 2013, he was sharing, he said, in my 65 years of being Yogananda's disciple, he said, I have never been at a loss to help somebody by turning to Master's teachings. So it's a wonderful resource, and we have 3 days. Let's make the most of it. So let's start with some chanting. And thank you, David. So what we're going to do is, I forgot to do something. I want to ask blessings for myself, and do keep me in your prayers. Now, we are going to sing two songs which are very universal. One was popularized by Yoganandaji. It's called Door of My Heart. And the other, I believe, is Swami Kriyanandaji's chant, I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. So we're going to sing these a few times. Now, Door of My Heart was so dear to Yoganandaji that once he started singing it on a rooftop, it was around this time, evening, 7 p.m. And he sang and he sang and sang. And if you go to Kolkata in Tulsi Bose's house, actually, some of you were there, perhaps. This is where this remarkable event and miracle happened. People started coming out of their homes, listening. They knew Mukunda and the Yogananda. He had now become Yogananda. This was 1935-36. And they came on their rooftops and they joined him in singing. And they sang and they sang and they sang till sunrise. And we won't do that. You can do try it sometimes. Master said, you know, a night goes in so many different ways. Why not? Somebody once asked him, is it okay to cry for God? Master said, you know, publicly restrain your feelings a little bit. It becomes a little awkward if somebody starts crying out of devotion. But Master says, by all means. He said, why not? He said, people cry over so many things. We all would have a list. When we were children, we cried over a toy or whatever. And Master says, how many people cry for God? So, as we sing Door of My Heart now, what I'd like you to do is this happened to me. It's an exercise I've gone through and I still go through. On one level, I'm asking God to come to me right now, right here. It would be so wonderful if Babaji came in and Master came in, you know, right now. But a friend told me that he was in Babaji's cave, again, as many of you perhaps were. And he said, Aditya, I had gone there, as many devotees do, with the hope that Babaji, I want to see you. You know, when you're going there, especially the first time, you really want to see him. And he said, interestingly, in my meditation, I felt at some point in my meditation a very strong presence right behind me. And he said, my intuitive thought was, it's Babaji. But here's the interesting thing. He said the immediate next thought was fear. The fear was, I hope he doesn't take me with him, because what about my family in Delhi? So it's very interesting. On one level, we want God's will to come to us. We want our heart to be saturated by God. But there is a part of us, as I chanted this song years ago, I said, you know, there's a part of me which is afraid of his coming, because who knows what he may ask? Who knows what he will do? So if something like that comes, it's okay. Just write it down. And we will not be asking for a submission of these sheets. It's just for us to have that understanding with God that I want you to come. I want only thee, but I also want that. And then we'll come to the discussion that, okay, it's okay to want something and it's okay, it's good to want God. Now, how do we reconcile all these things together? Yeah. So we get clarity and magnetism in our efforts. So let's sing a few times these two chants. Open wide I keep for thee, door of my heart. Open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want 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 only thee, Lord, thee, only. Let's clap together. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee.
I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee.
Let's offer a prayer together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, beloved Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar Ji, our beloved Guru, Paramhans Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, our friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda Ji, we humbly bow before you all. Beloved God, we invoke your presence in this weekend event and in every moment of our lives. We are your children. Come to us through our daily meditations, prayers, and service, and use us as instruments to channel your presence, your divine will, your blessings and grace with all our brothers and sisters. We are thine. Come to us. Om, peace. Amen. Let's meditate just for 2 to 3 minutes, sitting upright. Let's take a double breath. Gathering the energy in the body, breathe out, relaxing the tissues one more time. Release any tensions. And this third time, feel that you're drawing the energy in the spine or in the heart. Breathe out. And try to lift that energy, that feeling of devotion, devotional aspiration, very naturally, relaxingly lift it to the point between the two eyebrows. And after you have done so, in this very brief meditation, try also to feel that, yes, I am feeling some joy there. I am feeling calmness and stillness. We'll go into this subject tomorrow in more detail. But for now, we've called to God. Let's feel Him in this temple, in our bodies, and especially at the point between the two eyebrows for 2 minutes. Om. 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 Om Shanti. All right. So before we begin, of course, I tried my best to come to many of you, greet you, get to know you. But I just want to know, and many faces I do remember from past events, the last year's event over here. But I just want to ask, how many of us over here have taken Kriya initiation? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. And how many are moving in that direction, the remaining, and then some of our friends are like, yeah. So, and why is this question important? Because especially tomorrow we'll go a little bit more in this subject of what exactly happens at the Christ Center, or as in Hinduism it's called the Kutas, the Chaitanya over here. Why is it important? And again, from even a brain, a neuroscience perspective, there are many things going on, especially at the point between the two eyebrows. It's simply a part of the body. Spiritually speaking, it's an aspect of our consciousness. And when we tune over there, then certain, of course, benefits and experiences do come. So we'll talk about it. And I wanted to just see how much, where to start and begin. Now, today, let me start with the story, and then we'll go into the subject of the will of God, because that raises the question, what is God? And it's very interesting. I was telling somebody a few years ago, I said, now I've been on the path 18 years, then it was 14. And naturally, people ask you, hey, what have you learned in 14 years? Tell us some experiences. And I said, first of all, I told them, I said, I live with somebody who's been on the path 51 years. That's Nayaswami Jaya. So I said, it's wonderful. I said, it's just such a wonderful path. The returns, there are daily returns to be had. And I said, I'm barely scratching the surface. I've barely scratched the surface in 14 years. And before I could say anything, this one person in the crowd, they said, really? That's so discouraging. The person said, I've just started and I'm feeling good, but hearing that after 14 years, you haven't even scratched the surface, what hope do I have then? And I said, but I said, you let me finish. You have to understand what is the surface. What am I scratching the surface of? I said, this is like the sky without a roof. This is like an ocean without a depth. And I said, on one level, there are daily returns. But I said, somehow I can't say after 14 years, just like my wonderful friend Swami Jaya, I've never heard him say after 51 years, well, this was it. From tomorrow, I don't have to do this. The very act of searching, the calling to God, the feeling for Him, why wouldn't you be guided, by if there is a God? We call each other when there's a question, when there's a problem. We perhaps take some time out just to ask our own higher self, just to gather our minds, close our eyes and see. And if somebody told you that, Aditya, you are no orphan. I do have parents, but from a divine perspective, you are a child of God. And I said, really? So, when do I get to meet them? Right now. All the time. Why should you not be with your parents? And I was like, wow, that's wonderful. So I want to pick it up a little bit from that angle, that if such a possibility exists, then how do we stay with our parents all the time? And not just after death, really, because after death, nothing changes all that much. It's like, how much do we change every morning? Little bit. But the person who went to sleep is the person who gets up. State of consciousness is the same. So unless we change now, we won't change tomorrow, and we won't change if there is another incarnation and things like that. So the now is what we have. Now, last year I took a seclusion. It's a practice, it's a teaching of Yogananda ji. You can take a day off. He recommended at least a week. Swami Kriyanandaji used to urge us. He said, if you can, try 2 weeks. So I took a week in the Himalayas. I'm from India, and I went there, and it was absolutely. I was by myself. Food and other things were being served in this house where I was staying, so I was totally quiet. No phone calls, no gadgets, of course. And I had a return ticket to come back to Pune, where I serve. So the week went beautifully well. And when I was returning, I said, Divine Mother, this was so wonderful. I'll try to hold on. Now you can call God Divine Mother, Father, friend, Guru. And I said, Mother, I'm going to talk to you about everything. I have felt you close, and I don't want that distance. I'll delay that distancing because the world has its way of getting in there and making us forget some things. I said, Mother, I'm going to talk to you as much as I can. So a cab came to take me to the station, and it was a 4-hour drive. So I stayed in the cab. I was just looking around. God is here. God is in this car. God is in this driver. Beautiful. Then I got the news when you start coming down, and I got a message, your train is delayed by 35 minutes. So I said, perfectly fine. I said, Mother, no problem. I'm in no hurry. There are no appointments. So then the driver tells me, Sir, I have something to do. Is it okay if I don't drop you at the station? I had said, but the next in line, because the train will go from there. I said, no problem. It's anyways late. Take me wherever you have to. So I got off at the second station. So once I was there now, I said, I have time. And I said, I have to sit somewhere. I said, Mother, where shall I? Now, there's a technique in which you can do this. Really, that's the crux of today's talk. Yogananda said, you ask the question at the, you might say, brain or at the point between the two eyebrows. You may close your eyes. Even a person who does not know these teachings, if they have to do something in their company, they're going to close their eyes and say, now, what am I really going to do in this situation? And then they think they are thinking it through, but one of the options of what they're thinking feels right to them, they try their best. If they don't, they're like, I'm too confused, I can't think it through. But it's a very simple technique. You ask, Yogananda said over here, and make it simple. Ask, let's say, two things. And then weigh the options. Where do you weigh them? In your heart. You say, Mother or God, or if you're talking just to yourself, you say, Aditya, how about this? And the interesting thing is, just like there are machines for different things, this particular act in the machinery, in the thing called our body, our being, our chakras, if you ask over here and feel over here, you will get a response. Now, in the beginning, it may take, Kriyananda is very clear about it, months, weeks, days, hours. But he said you get so good at it that he said sometimes before I finish asking, Divine Mother tells me what to do. So he said, because there's no distance. You see, in the beginning, you're getting used to it. It's like learning a car. Once you know it, you don't think it through. It's like Yogananda asked his devotee, Dr. Lewis. He said, Doctor, do you pray? And Dr. Lewis, very matter of factly said, Sir, I'd like to think I'm praying all the time. And Master said, yes, you are. But from now onwards, I want you to pray believing. It's not enough just to pray and maybe something will happen. You don't want to be presumptuous, but he said, you are so close to God, you know he's there for you, you are his child, you should know if it's the right thing you're asking, it is being given to you. So Dr. Lewis said, that I was not doing. And Master said, now start doing that. So in the same way, we ask and you feel. So I was at that station and I said, Mother, I have some time. Where should I sit? Now, there was a bench in front of me, there was another bench, and there was another bench about 100 meters away in the sun. So I felt you can sit anywhere, but why don't you sit there? That answer had the calmest feeling, right? You just know sometimes this is the right answer. So I made my way, I went to the bench. Now, interestingly, the bench was one long one, it had 5 seats. I was in a complete playful mood, so I said, where on the bench? Let's try out. Kriyananda said, people say that we complain too soon. He said, you say, oh, God is trying me. God is testing me. Swami said, why don't you test him? All you have to do is ask and see if he's responding or not. He said, your attitude should be right. And he said, if you ask, which parent would not respond to the child? So I said, there were 5 seats. I said, mother, where? So I got a feeling that sit right here in the middle. I said, well, she's my mother. I can be playful. So I said, no, I'm going to sit there. Really, I did that. How else would you know who's right? So I said, okay, nice to know your suggestion. I said, mother, I think I'll sit there. And immediately I felt restlessness in my heart. And the clear feeling was, well, you can. You see, God doesn't stop us, which is why we are in somewhat of a mess. He's out of respect. God doesn't twist our arm. He doesn't force us to go by His will. And in that, to such a degree that we are like, I told somebody once about divine will. They said, I thought God didn't have a will. How come He has a will? I said, no, I think you're confusing will with whims. I said, God is not a moody God. But of course, I said, your intelligence is coming from Him. Kriyananda said, my ability to ask the question makes me know that I am conscious, and hence there must be an infinite consciousness out of which I'm asking, I'm trying to return to that. So in the same way, so I said, mother, I think I'll sit there. And there was this like, you can, but if you really want to see the fun, don't. And I said, that was the whole purpose. I said, of course, I was joking. I went and sat in the middle. Lots of time to do. I started practicing japa, thinking of God, repeating God and Guru's name. And I remember very clearly one person came on the right, a second one came. So we were now 3 people. Then this fifth person came. We were 3 people. The fourth person came on the far end. So the seat where I wanted to sit, and I was told not to, nobody had come. I was like, okay. I sat where I was told to. I'm doing japa, and just a minute later, a gentleman comes. And remember, I'm in regular clothes, not this kurta pajama. I was in jackets and whatnot. And so this man comes, and he sits. I didn't see. And a moment later, he says, are you from Ananda? Now, this is happening high in the Himalayas. He said, are you from Ananda? So I looked at him. I said, yes, I am. Then we looked at each other. He said, are you Dr. Aditya? I said, I am. He said, oh, I've seen your videos online and such. I said, well, thank you. Nice. I said, sorry, I have not recognized you. He said, I'm an online student, but I've seen you. And now you can imagine what I was going through in that moment. Yeah. My train was delayed. My station was changed. There was a seat I was told to keep vacant. I did. And lo and behold, who is sitting on this seat? So then this man says, wow, Aditya, I was just praying to God yesterday that, I have a 1-year-old child and I live in a place where there is no center for hundreds of kilometers. And I want to check my techniques of meditation and how do I do this? And he said, just yesterday I was praying to God. And I said, okay. I said, well, we have 20 minutes. Our train is late. Let's check your techniques right now. So we went through that. And in that moment, I was just so taken by what was happening. I didn't in that moment share with him, but I met him a year later in Gurgaon. And he said, oh, you remember we met and then you told me move close to a center. He said, now I'm in Chandigarh and things are going well for me and all. And I said, wonderful. And I said, I want you to know one more thing. Divine Mother is watching over you. I said, she watches over everybody. But I said, I'm telling you because last year when we met, she didn't tell me, but she told me that this seat is not for you, Aditya. Somebody's going to come and sit here. So my question is, if there is that level of intelligence around us, how much am I asking God? Now, Kriyananda said before he put on a shirt, a tie, he would ask. I remember many years ago, I had a very interesting experience. Somebody gifted me a shirt. And I was a new monk. I had like 3 pairs of clothes, 3 or 4. So I was like, oh, I'll save this for a good day. I'll save this for a good day. So finally, somebody invited us for breakfast. And I said, I said, now what should I? So I put those two shirts on the bed and I said, Mother, what should I wear? I got a feeling, why didn't you wear your new shirt, new t-shirt? So I put that on. I went for breakfast. We are having this breakfast in somebody's house for the first time. The main door is open. And in the middle of the conversation, I see somebody popped in to the house. You rarely do that. A stranger rarely does that. They popped in. They looked around. They said, I'm sorry, wrong house. And they left. And then they again came in. They said, can I ask you a question? I'm looking for a place for rental. So I came out. I started talking to them. Well, this person is now a Kriyaban. And years later, they said that, Aditya, when I came in that day looking for an apartment in this big city where millions of people stay, she said, I randomly was looking for apartments. But that morning, I had prayed to Shiva. And I had prayed with a certain mantra, Om Namah Shiva, Shivaya. And I was wearing a shirt with Om Namah Shivaya. What do I know? But God knows. The question is, Swami used to say, the question is, are you asking him which shirt you should wear? Now, most people will say, well, I have nothing else to do. You can do this simultaneously. You can ask God, where should I go? What should I say? Um, I don't know. I mean, most of the times we don't know. Even a great saint like Padre Pio, somebody said, how do you know some of these things about my life? He said, well, God allows me to read his notebook sometimes. Now, sometimes. But Padre Pio must be sitting close to God to be able to read his notebook. So the question is, how close to God are we sitting? Or if we've kept him at a distance, then unfortunately, like Master said to a monk who was living with him in his very building in Mount Washington, Yogananda ji, first this monk was going through a challenge. And Swami, who was the head monk, he arranged for a meeting between Yogananda ji and this monk. And Master talked to him. The boy was happy. Well, a few months later, he was again sad. And Swami sought another appointment. And Master, just very compassionately, matter of factly, he looked out the window and he said, Walter, I'm sorry, this time I cannot help because it has gone too far. And then what did he say? He says, he has inwardly stopped asking for help. It was not like Master was taking it personally. Well, he's not asking me. No, what he was saying is, I love him just like God. I am there. Like Krishna says to Arjuna, oh, Arjuna, I will observe. As long as you want to lead your life, I will observe. But the day you invite me, I will come in and take complete charge of your life. So you see, God is, whenever he will come, like he came to Saint Anthony of the desert, and Master tells this story, you should hear it in his voice. And Anthony's crying and crying, and he's 120 years old, mind you. It was a long crying. And finally, this cave is crumbling down and such, and Christ appears, protects him from Satan, and becomes one with him. And Anthony says, my Lord, I called you so long. Where were you? And Master says, Christ said to him, Anthony, I was just the same with you. I was just the same with you. I was always with you. Because why? So it's like we are trying to retrace our steps back to peace, calmness, joy, Om, Amen, light, Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, call it by whatever name. But there is within us, it's like a child cannot stay with the neighbors too long. He must return home after a weekend or something. So when the point comes that you say, Mother, I want to hold your hand in everything. You know who was like that? Yogananda ji. He once was, I believe, coming somewhere outside of Los Angeles, maybe from San Diego, and he stopped the car. He told some monks, he sent one of the monks, he said, can you go in and get a batch of shortbread cookies? And this person said, absolutely, sir. So he went in and he came out. He said, sir, sorry, the lady said she's out of them. Now, Master, of course, didn't feel bad, but what he did was surprising, very interesting. Right away in the car, Master said, she's out of cookies? He said, yes. And Master immediately prayed. He said, Mother, if there were no cookies over here, why did you ask me to come? And just then, the monks in the car saw a flash of light fall on the shop. The lady came out running and she said, sir, actually, I have one batch. But I was saving it for somebody who's ordered it, but this gentleman will only come in the evening. I'll make him a fresh batch. You can have this one. And then Master said, then he said, I never do anything without asking Divine Mother. So if Master does his shopping, not so much by a list, but by talking to Divine Mother, why shouldn't we? And that is what Swami was saying. That, and he said, the more it's like a friendship, the more you talk, the easier it becomes. And sure enough, we'll make some mistakes. It's a relationship after all. You'll learn this was not right. I was presumptuous here. I thought your silence meant this, whereas it meant that. But Swami said, as you do this more and more, it starts getting better. Now, the question is, who is God? Is he a man? I've been saying Divine Mother. If he's consciousness, what does that even mean? And Swami Kriyanandaji said that, you see, consciousness is one of the easiest ways to describe it, because he said on a daily basis, we go through at least two states of consciousness or awareness. Consciousness, and I think of it as awareness. Imagine somebody's unconscious. My background was in medicine. So you see somebody who's brought unconscious. They don't talk, they don't move around. Death is one step down further. But if somebody's unconscious, after time they get up, they're like, oh, where am I? Oh, who are you? Why am I here? And all that. But on a daily basis, when we go to sleep, we are what is called in a subconscious state. And then you wake up and it happens to you. Now you're like, hey, oh, it's Monday. Okay, now I get it. And you wash your face, you get ready, and you enter from subconscious into a conscious state. And Yogananda said many times we unfortunately just go between these two states. Once in a while, he said the third state, what he called super conscious, because he said you are very aware of things. And he says, you're joyful, you're calm, you just know. I met a man, he and his wife made a movie called Helmet. And this movie was made because they lost their son in a road traffic accident when he was not wearing a helmet. Now, the interesting thing is, I met this man, and after I saw the movie in a film festival, we were talking. I was expressing my condolences for his loss. And he said, but and because I was representing Ananda, a spiritual work, he asked me a question. He said, now, Aditya, I have not understood one thing. He says, that night, we talk to our son every day at dinner. We spoke to him that night also. We went to bed. At 1:30 a.m., his mother wakes up. And my wife, she wakes up and she says, she's very anxious and she says, I'm trying to call our son. He's not answering the phone. Do you have his friend's number? He said, what's wrong with you? Why are you calling him and his friends? She said, no, something is not right. He says, you may have seen a dream or something. Just go back to sleep. She said, I need to talk to somebody in his friend circle. Well, they called different people and one boy answered the phone and he was already crying, this boy. And when she said, I want to talk to my son. This boy said, Auntie, I'm so sorry, we are standing around his dead body. He had an accident. Now, this man was asking me, how did my wife know? And this must have happened to many of us on some other level. Ideally, what you need to do is you're relaxed physically. Think maybe it's a Sunday morning, you're on a vacation or something. And when you're relaxed, because you have nothing, like I was relaxed that time after seclusion. I was like, okay, I'm going to be unbroken on a continuous call with Divine Mother. So when you're relaxed, you're like, oh, I wonder how Kyle is doing. Oh, I wonder how this guy Gaurav is doing. You think of somebody after weeks, months, or years. And has it happened to you that either you meet that person in the supermarket, or they call you, or they send you an email and they say, oh, I don't know why I was thinking about you. Has it happened? Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of heads move. Now, what is happening over there? Yogananda said, just like we are meeting in person, he says there are two other meetings that happen. There is a meeting of energies. You go to a person, your place, you say, I like this energy. What's happening? What do you guys do over here? I'm feeling a resonance with the energy. The third is a communication of thoughts. Actually, just yesterday, I was with some friends in New York, and they were telling me about an animal whisperer who was on a phone call years ago telling them some challenge one of their cats was having. And this person said, right now, your cat, I mean, she told many things. She was asking the cat why she's not going into the litter area and such, and the cat was giving her reasons. And this staggering communication is happening over hundreds of miles. And at some point, this person says, well, this cat is, because and the person had given no details. He said, because your cat is blind, she's anxious about another cat and dog in the house. And then they said, well, since you know so much, can you ask her how is she feeling? And she said she does not want to answer right now because she's rubbing her belly on the floor. And this gentleman on the call, he looked down and she said the cat is saying that she wants to finish rubbing her belly now. And it was happening live. So the point is, even the word yoga means union, oneness with God. So Yogananda said in super consciousness, which we all can touch every day, he said it's all happening in the present moment. Once, interestingly, Yogananda turned to Swami Kriyananda, who was a young monk, and Yogananda said, Walter, in reality, nothing is really even happening in creation. Nothing. And he said, here things happen in past tense, present, and future. But he said in God, there is only present tense. It's a little philosophical, but on a more practical level, what happens? Let's say you're meditating and you think, okay, I'm going to meditate 15 minutes, but has it happened? 45 minutes go by, and you say, really? It didn't feel like that. So you see, on one level, time exists very much. When you're inside time, you don't know how to kill it, as they say. On the other hand, when you're so engrossed, and this happens to yogis, it happens to scientists. Like I was saying, if you're relaxed, it may happen on a beach to you. You're thinking of something and it starts happening. And Yogananda said, because you were relaxed, your consciousness got uplifted and you touched super consciousness. So he said, think of God as bliss, as joy, but as consciousness. Why? Because then this is where he lives. And if I lift my awareness, my consciousness, then I can be with him. And if I don't lift it, then Master said it's a horror show. Yeah, he said, make no mistakes. I mean, in one of his talks, he said, if you want to play the villain, he said, your throat will have to be cut. And it's like, whoa. But he said, it's happening in a dream. But he said, why create a bad dream? Make a nice dream. And when you are in a nice dream and you realize you're dreaming every day, you say, I want to wake up. I don't want to live in a dream state. So when we're thinking about talking to God or listening to his response, Swami's suggestion was talk to him, feel he's close to you. Before any important decision, Master said, you must meditate. In that meditation, when you're calm, he said, you project that option and then God will give you some response. Now, why does that happen in meditation, first of all? Because there are many different types of meditation, different techniques, pranayams. How do we go about it? A very common theme, and I'll read then from autobiography that Yogananda writes. He said, if your breath, to the degree your breath is calm. Now that is something you see universally in meditation. Sorry? Oh, it's the breath. If your breath is calm, then you are more or less moving in that direction. Now, there's a pitfall. I remember we were doing a 3-hour meditation some years ago, and there was a boy, one of my friends, he was sitting in front of me. So because it was 3 hours, I opened my eyes a few times in between. And each time I opened my eyes, I saw the person, my friend in front of me who was on the floor. He was meditating like this. Now, I didn't want to touch him or straighten him because he could have gotten up with a jolt and disturbed everybody. But each time I opened my eyes, he was this side or that side. So anyway, after that came time to have food and prasad. And he came up to me and he said, today's meditation was so peaceful, no? Now, because he was my very close friend, I said, yeah, it was peaceful. But I said, you were not meditating. You were sleeping. He said, really? I said, yes. So because in sleep also the breath rate, heart rate goes down. So there is a certain kind of relaxation there. But what Yogananda ji said was, he said, you see, your breath is tied to, let's say, 3 essential things. state of mind, state of feelings or emotions, and the ego. Because these are the impediments. Even in a simple family, let's say, what's your good name? Janet. So let's say Janet is my mom and I'm a teenager. Generally, teenagers do this more universally. And she tells me to do something. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to listen to you. I don't like that. One common theme over here is I. And then I like this, I don't like this. So Yogananda said that God is here for everybody. He told Dr. Lewis once, because when you're living with a master, you feel like, how come he's talking to God about cookies and everything? And I'm trying night and day and nothing's working out for me. And master told him once, he said, I want you to know God loves all his children equally. He loves you and me just like he loves Jesus and Buddha and Krishna. The difference between you and me, Master said, is that I have shown God that I love him. And you are trying to do it. You have to perfect your love for him. Because if the ego comes, if I really say, oh, you're my mother, I love you. Well, if you love me, show it, prove it by some action. And so it is with God that why should I bring if he's my creator, if he can help me, if I'm even afraid. And you know who was afraid? Christ. Not afraid, but did he want the crucifixion? No. He asked once that if this can be avoided, let it be so. But if it is thy will, may thy will be done. So if it's a difficult, and here's the interesting thing, the closer we go to God, the more he's going to test us. Master said that's why he has very few friends. The club is really small over there. But Master said, don't worry about the tests. He said, don't worry about the tests. You can tell God. And I tell you, this happened to me many years ago when I learned and I was convinced that, oh my God, I was reading Kriyananda's book, The Essence of Bhagavad Gita. And I said, oh my goodness, just the way he's talking and addressing about God. I said, well, I bowed wherever I was in my room. I said, I'm sorry. I now know you exist. All these years, I just didn't know if you're there. You don't think sometimes about these matters deeply enough. And then the statement over there was, allow me to take complete charge of your life. And I have to say, I was not happy about that because I thought, well, I like to be in charge of my life. If I bring in God, he may take half of it, all of it. He's saying clearly, I'll take charge, complete charge of your life. So I said, but then I felt ashamed. So I said, God, forgive me. I don't have the courage to give you all the room, but I want to. I want to. And I took a few minutes to understand this. And I said, you are a good God. You know everything. And I said, help me get out of the way. And I said, bit by bit, if you show me that I know you have my welfare at heart, but if you show it a few times, then I'll really get out of the way. But help me get out of the way. So you see, that's where grace comes in, kripa. Grace, what is grace? Kriyananda said, grace is the power to uplift spiritually. We are doing our meditation, chanting, prayer. But once in a while, this hand of God, call it, if you will, comes and you are elevated in an experience, in a certain miracle, in a hopeless situation. People say, oh my goodness, this was a miracle. So when something like that happens, you say, he's taking a special interest in my life. And that is one of the best times to say, not just now, guide me all the time. You are my father, you are my mother. Let this, Swami said that we used to ask him for miracles around Master's life because they bring faith, they bring convincing. And Kriyananda at some point, he said, miracles were a part of Master's daily life. He said, wherever he went, his energy was such, he was in such a state of consciousness, multiple miracles were happening around him all the time. And he said, you and I call them miracles, but that's simply how Master lived. And that's what he was showing us, that why would you want to live in any other way? So the will of God is that we finally try to listen to him, understand him. And Master said, when you can get the breath out of the way, then you know that. Because let's say somebody says, let's say I spilled some milk over here. Well, Kelly will be like, Aditya, what is this? My first reaction can be, I didn't do it. Or, so your breath reflects your degree of involvement. Your breath reflects how much you are taking things personally. And if the mind is restless, it's reflected in the breath. So through meditation, Master said, first calm down. And when you're calm, when you've prayed to God for clarity, for strength, and he said, then you say, Mother, Father, friend, guide me. And you feel for that response. And then you take some steps in that direction. And Kriyanandaji said, practice when it is easy. The first meeting I had with Swamiji in 2008, he was not mincing any words. He spoke of a third world war. And it's not like, yeah, all these great prophets and saints, that's what they do in their free time. They talk about future cataclysms. No. He said, look at the signs, look what's happening. And then he looked around at some of us and then he said, when times get difficult, I would like to see you serve as channels of light. He's saying this to everybody. God is saying this to all children. What's a channel of light? Somebody who is established in God. Where God is, no danger can come, no harm can come. Think of the saints. So the point is, when things get difficult, chaotic in our personal life, family life, country, world, which they are, be in light, stay in God. That is the safest place. And once you're in God, God is not removed from this world. People, again, like I said earlier, they think, oh, if I'm in God, what about the world? It's not, first of all, your creation and your responsibility. Your responsibility is to, it's like, imagine a servant comes home, and because the door has been left open for him to come and serve, he comes and he makes himself comfortable, makes a cup of coffee, and starts living over there. And one day the owner shows up after the vacation, from his vacation. He says, now, who are you? And it's a misplaced identity. God is the master. This is God's house where we are invited to live for some time, to serve, so that we can go back home. But if we say, I'm going to do everything, but keep him out of the equation, it just doesn't work. It may work temporarily, but when trouble strikes, like they say, we all turn to him. We run to him instinctively because we know somewhere we went wrong and we must re-establish that connection. So anyway, I could keep going on and on in this vein. There are some stories I could share, but I want to take a pause now and see if there's a question that you might have on this subject of how to be receptive to God's guidance, divine guidance, and how to be open to his will, that we may allow, feel, and channel his will. Because this is the final thing I'll say. Just because it's God, he's powerful. If he exists, he must be very powerful. So we think, oh, God wants this. Well, who am I to say anything or oppose it? And who am I to do anything about it? God will do it. The saints will do it. So I asked Swami Kriyanandaji in 2009, I said, Swamiji, I was young and I was reading books and I was a little confused. I said, Swamiji, is this world perfect already? I mean, in the sense that, am I wrong in seeing faults over here? Because I was seeing a lot. And I said, and if something is wrong, should we do something about it or should we not? I said, what should I do? And he said, yes and no. He said, first of all, God has created things. He knows what he's doing. But he has given us free will, Aditya. And he said, look around. How many people are asking God before they do anything? And he says, so from that point of view, everything stands in great need of change. But we must do it peacefully. First, he said, you see it all, but how, if you get restless in the process, you've become part of the problem. So he said, it's like a doctor. You are seeing somebody get a heart attack, but imagine if the doctors start fainting at that site, or seeing blood, or seeing an accident. They're like, oh my God. Well, that's exactly why we've come to you. So when things get difficult, you first of all, Swami used to practice. He was quite a person, He said, I'm not recommending it. But on the other hand, he said, why not? He said, I do it on a daily basis. He said he used to imagine worst case scenarios for anything and everything that he did. Now, many people would say, well, if you imagine it so much, it's going to happen. And Swami says, not that way. I don't imagine it from that visualization and manifesting it. He said, but I'm imagining it. And he said, in the worst case scenario, if I can still be happy and at peace, then I know I can do something about it. But if I'm myself agitated and disturbed, then he said, to that degree, I'm not an effective instrument. So that is so wise and beautiful. Again, like I said in the beginning, it's such a practical way that because in that process, not only are you helping the world, you are being helped. That's called karma yoga. You're serving in such a way that you're channeling God, you're bringing clarity, you're bringing peace. It says in the Bhagavad Gita that how do you know when do you make the best decisions? We all want to make in every moment of our life the best decision. In one verse, Krishna says, chapter 2, verse 65, he says, by being in bliss. Let me actually read the exact lines because this is important. We have to make so many decisions. He writes over here, I'll read three verses, they are interconnected. Chapter 2, 65, 66, 67. With the attainment of soul bliss, every vestige of sorrow disappears. Bliss gives perfect discrimination. And this is the discrimination of, parsing out what's right, what's not right. Bliss gives perfect discrimination and soon establishes one's consciousness firmly in the self. Those with unsettled consciousness have no discrimination. Those who are unmeditative cannot know peace. And for those who lack peace, how is happiness possible? Finally, as a boat moving on water, may be swept off its course by a gale, so discrimination may be swept from its path by the vagaries of sensory obstacles. So we have been given the senses, and it's wonderful. It's like windows in a house. You can look around, you can see, you can learn, you can taste this world. But imagine a person who is sitting at the window all the time. What good is that? You have to live in the house, you have to know how to navigate. And when we can stay in the joy, in bliss, in meditative state more and more, then, like I said, Kriyananda said, even before I finish my question, Divine Mother sometimes gives me a music, she gives me the guidance. You'll see many of his videos. He would come on the stage and he said, do you have any questions? And somebody would ask him a question and he said, I don't know. But think of it this way. And he would give a 45-minute answer. And Swami said this happened all his life. He said, the moment I say, I don't know, and he said, I relax in that, I know. Somehow I know. Master tells me. So, because again, he sees a problem, he does not let it draw it in him. That's his job. And then he would say, I don't know, but he would open himself by being in bliss, and this clarity would come. And so that's how he wrote so many books. That's how, somebody asked him how you were with Yogananda just 3.5 years. How did you write 150 books on his teachings? And Swami said, I've kept up my conversation for 66 years now. He said, those were 3.5 years in person. He said, then I've kept up my conversation. And he said, now I don't know where Kriyananda ends and Yogananda begins. Is anybody still awake? Yes, David is. You all are. Okay. Questions? The sooner you ask questions, the sooner we all can go home then. Yes. And please tell me your name because I'm still getting used to it. Laurie, yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, on one level, it is God's will, but it's mixed with a lot of personal karma also. Remember that free will that we all have. So, let's say somebody's, let's say, gotten into a debt. We can't just say, oh, it's his karma or it's God's will. Well, if you have the money, you can right away bring them out of it. The interesting thing is that illnesses, disease particularly happens, Yogananda said, when we've broken some law in thought, in energy, or in action. Disease was not part of God's plan, Yogananda writes in his teachings. He said we were not supposed to get ill. Now, this seems very ridiculous or like too outrageous, but he said that is not part of God's plan. But when you've broken a law, he said, then you have to come back to it's like you've gone, the pendulum has gone too much in one way. So, doctors get at work. Now, how does a prayer help? Kriyanandaji again would remind us, he said, why does Yogananda, these are a line of what are called avatars. Why do they come? Well, God can do this. But Master said God does everything through instruments. So if you and I and the person who has fallen ill are instruments, when somebody is in trouble, if we extend medicines, help, prayers, we can speed up that thing. Now, yes, at the same time, Yogananda, he called his way of healing divine will healing. Because the question must be asked by the person who is sick and others who are praying, why did this happen in the first place? Let's say if I smoke and I get an illness, well, there's a direct correlation that this disease has been shown to produce that outcome. Similarly, if some illness has happened, if we can pray that, okay, this has happened and this is not good. Master said once somebody was dying and they came to Yogananda and they said, can you please help? And Master said, I'll pray, but I'm sorry, I don't feel that I should go. 15 minutes soon afterwards, the person died, and 15 minutes later, he went. He told everybody, he told the husband and one more person to stay. Everybody else had to leave the room. And in, I think, 5 minutes, the lady walked out alive with everybody from that room. And she was a distant relative of Master. And somebody said to Yogananda ji, oh, you brought her back to life because she was your relative? And Master said, oh, no. Divine Mother told me to. Then they said, why didn't you go earlier before she was dead when he had come pleading? And Master said, Divine Mother didn't tell me at that time to go. I was with Kriyanandaji one time in 2009 where somebody over breakfast asked him, Swamiji, why don't you write in more detail about Patanjali's teachings? Because he has written about them very beautifully in a book called The Art and Science of Raja Yoga. And this person said, people come, they're confused, they have different interpretations on those teachings. Why don't you write something more exhaustive? And Swami just matter of factly, very simply said, he said, that's a very good idea. He said, but I only do what my guru tells me to do. And then he asked for a pancake. So I thought that was very interesting that, that I said, oh, interesting. So 2 years later, we heard from Swami's secretary Lakshman that Swamiji has written 21 pages of a book called Demystifying Patanjali. He finally wrote the whole book in 2 weeks. It got worldwide first prize in spiritual books category. And at that time, I thought about it. And then Swami would, when he would launch the book, he said, I felt Master's inspiration that this is a need, this is required. And I said, interesting. 2 years ago, also, he liked that idea. But he was like that child. He was waiting for his father to tell him what to do. And that's a very important, if you look at all great saints, think of Hanuman and Ram. A true disciple really has no will of his own. Really. Like when Padre Pio entered the monastery, there was something to this effect written on the door that you are dead. Beyond this door, you are dead. You will be born again in Christ as you step in. So the point is, when we take discipleship or we pray to God or a great master, like Christ said, your ways are not mine, neither are mine yours. You're trying to say, okay, can we sit and talk? I want to understand, why did this illness happen? What can I do about it? And then God tells us, if not in detail, at least we participate in the process. That yes, if I pray, the outcomes are better. But we should know sometimes, mostly we should pray, but sometimes the prayer is not so much for healing, but for the soul of the person, because an illness does play a role of awakening introspection or change of habits. So your question has different answers, but God wants us to play a role, and but we must be able to talk to Him and ask Him. Read his book, Divine Will Healing, maybe a little bit more. Yes. Forgive me, I'll just take off my sweater. Thank you. Oh, you talk to him all the time, you get crickets. Yeah. Yes.
Tell me, what should I do? What is the right way? And then it's just like nothing. And is there a way, is there or a way around that? Or it's frustrating and I keep meditating and it's just like, yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So the question is that I pray to God, I really want an answer, but I hear nothing. And at times, and what am I supposed to do? I have realized finally that God is more stubborn than me. And so what I, in the end, have to do is just calm myself down and pick up my cushion and just sit down for 2, 3 minutes. And then I realize that the moment I calm down, again, it's not an ego game, of course, with him. But Master said God's voice is silence. So, like this great saint once said, you and I are used to, of course, communicating, which is necessary in these times. But in the higher ages and times, people don't speak. Somebody asked Kriyananda ji, how did Yogananda train his most advanced disciples? And you would think they got the most notes and the secret chapters and whatnot and personal time with him. Swami's answer was, Master trained his most advanced disciples through silence, through a look, a tilt of the head, an expression of the eye, and sometimes a passing glance. like, you know. So again, if a saint is training his most advanced people like that, we who are trying to talk to the saint or God, first, again, it's not like God does not want to come down to our level of speaking. A vision may come, a dream may come. He may speak loudly also. Who knows? Who can predict these things? But by and large, I have found that my agitation is related more to my attachment to a particular result. And when I say, okay, I'm sorry, I was hurrying these matters and okay, I'm ready to sit down. Then frankly, sometimes I've noticed the problem itself solves. Again, what happens is, let's say you had a problem at 6 a.m. and you've been trying to do a lot to solve this problem, but nothing's happening, you're exasperated, you've lost hours of meditation and all. When I finally sit down to meditate, sometimes I come out and the problem has solved itself. People talked or some harmony happened, forgiveness happened on their own level. And I'm like, how did this happen? And sometimes you get a feeling in your meditation that something nice is happening because a problem is solving after all. So I read in Swami's teachings, he said, you see, ultimately, now on one level, we are seeing different like cubes of ice, call our bodies, we are separate over here. Your problems may not be mine. That's how we perceive on this level. But ultimately, we are made of the same water, steam, air. So Swami said that if everything is consciousness, anytime you raise your consciousness, he said you see that yoga, union, unity. If you don't do that, separation from God, separation from health, wealth, relations, a lot of problems come. Ignorance is called the greatest disease, and the cure for ignorance is going back home. So, again, a simple meditation where we go back into the sound of Om or light or peace is, you may not have formulated even a prayer that please heal Aditya of this problem. It's not required. Master said in higher states you can't speak, but you know something beautiful is happening. That's why he said, once you pray, if you pray for somebody, one of his techniques is, we chant like that. And he said, don't go and ask after that, did you heal? I prayed for you. He said, if you felt energy go through you, result may or may not come right away. But the fact that you felt something go is proof that some healing has happened. Sometimes it is, that's all that's required. Sometimes years of that is required. And sometimes the outcome is still not what we want it to be. But again, calm down. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. The vritti is the feelings. The more we calm them, the more we see that the resolutions start happening over there. I met this lady saint. She was in silence for 62 years. She knew everything about me. And it's not about mind reading. I've met those people too. But she was blissful. She said the same things that Kriyananda had said to me in spoken words. The question is, how does somebody who has never met you, is in silence, know so much about you? Because she's not in a vacuum of silence. Oh, yeah, I was telling this statement. So, this saint said, silence is the perennial language which is often interrupted by talking. So, silence is God's language. If we can be not just silent, but say, okay, I unite my heart, mind, to you, then you're like, this is what it's all about. You get this aha moment. But as long as we're talking, we want him to talk like us, and that doesn't lead to many results. Yes, Guru Priya. Hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just tuning into all the other quote mothers and caretakers in the room. You have some advice for us.
Yeah. So that's
Meditation all at once.
perfect. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is that many of us caretakers, mothers over here, sometimes face this challenge that we are meditating, we are feeling drawn into the bliss of meditation, and you're reminded over there, so the thought comes of some responsibility or somebody who you have to take care of. And how do you draw the line? Should we continue perhaps meditating, or what shall we do about it? Um, Again, I think, Swami Kriyananda ji, because we have to also remember who are we following, because that ray and magnetism has an impact on our spiritual outcomes. So Swami Kriyananda ji said that, he said, very few people know that I have grown more through my outward service than through my meditations. That said, there were phases in his life where he was meditating 16 hours a day for months. So he was a strong meditator. Still, Yogananda had told him specifically that, Walter, your path, your life will be one of intense activity and meditation. And Swami said it is diametrically opposite to most people's journey, because most people say, well, enough of activity. Now let me sit down to meditate. So on one, but at the same time, we have to be careful that, well, that's why I won't meditate. It doesn't work like that, because then what's your activity imbued with? So I think if we are carrying that joy, remember also, these paths, ultimately, they may not seem like they're uniting. For example, the bliss of meditation is a very pure expression of how joy is experienced. Outward intense activity may seem like there's no joy over there. It's a little bit like somebody sculpting a stone. There's grinding going on and sanding going on, but the smoothness will come out very quickly. So outward activity for a person with our best intentions, trying to see God. Right now, our Dharmacharya, worldwide leader, Jyotish ji, is writing a book on Ananda Seva, finding God, finding liberation through service. So I suggest you certainly get that book, make a study, because it's a whole subject of Karma Yoga. That if my guru, if God has told me, if this is in front of me, I cannot, because if you ignore some person, that's bad karma. You can meditate as much as you want, so it's not easy on one level. So I think feel it out, talk to God, and in the sense that, okay, I'll meditate. That's why we do our morning evening meditation, and in between we try to serve in the best way we can. Also, since we are not removed people in caves and monasteries, I mean, we cannot act as if what's happening in front of us or to others doesn't matter to us, because that creates a very bad impression, rightly so, on others. So just take it in your stride. Like Master Swami said, when Master was with God, he was 100% with God. When he was with people, he was with them. So be like that a little bit. Does that help? Yes. Yeah.
Station. There's that tangent.
Uh, sorry? Very good question. So yeah, I'll repeat the question, that can it happen that we, in our desire to serve people, it becomes a detriment in our approach to God, in our search for God? Yes, it can happen. Yogananda ji said it's always suggested that you love God first and then love people. He said if you love people first, you may get attached to them. You see, it's like that devotee who was dying, that relative who was dying. Yogananda didn't say, let her die. He was not indifferent. He said, well, I'll pray, let's see. Person passes away. But when he stayed in God. Because if you're out of God, you're certainly not doing God's work. So it doesn't help in any case. So Master said that, and see God in people. But let's say a little child or somebody, if you say, oh, I'm seeing, you can't tell them you're seeing God in them. Maybe they'll feel too important, or they'll think you're crazy. Like there was this man, when Master was in this desert retreat outside of LA, there was a man who used to live just outside, across the road to where his house was, and this man used to play, I think, on the radio a song, I am a king of my castle, I am the king of, and he had a hut, a little carpet, a chair, and when Master was dictating these notes, this song would come into their window, and Master would stop. He would tell the monks, that man is a king. He's a king of his castle. Look how peacefully he's living. And so the Master had deep love for this man. And he would look at him and beam him with smiles and all. But one day when Master, came out of his car and showered love and all and greetings on this man, he went inside, and this person came to the monks. He said, who is this man? And he said, oh, he's our teacher, he's our guru. He said, don't mind my saying this. He's a very nice man. But I think he's a little touched in the head. And and they told Master, and he just chuckled. And he said, how many people understand you're seeing God in them? Because we don't see God in ourselves. In meditation, when you feel God in you start seeing Him in everybody. That's where it begins. So I think it goes back to do your sadhana, pray for people. Yeah, but be appropriate with them. When it's a child, you have to be jovial. Otherwise, children grow up with the feeling, oh, these spiritual people, they are no fun and they don't talk to you, they don't take you out and all. Sri Yukteswarji, my lord of all people, Sri Yukteswarji, who was so strict with master, he used to carry pocket full of candies for children and other people. So be appropriate. Swami said that's actually the thing he liked, he said, the most in Yogananda ji, that master was appropriate for every occasion. Okay, so shall we do a little writing exercise? I know some of you have been scribbling, but maybe just for a few minutes we do, and then we'll close with that practice of that technique of how to project a question and get a response. So before we do that, I'd like to read a few lines from the chapter Experience in Cosmic Consciousness. So this is after, of course, Master Yogananda ji got the experience of Samadhi. Interestingly, when he came out, Sri Yukteswar ji was standing there very lovingly and he said, come, let's get the broom and clean the terrace. Then we'll walk by the Ganges. And Master said he was explaining, trying to teach him how to balance cosmic consciousness with day-to-day activities. And then these are the last few lines over here. Sri Yukteswar ji says, first Master says, I understand now, sir, why saints called the Lord unfathomable. Even everlasting life could not suffice to appraise him. Sri Yukteswarji says, that is true, but he is also near and dear. After the mind has been cleared by Kriya Yoga of sensory obstacles, meditation furnishes a twofold proof of God. Ever new joy is evidence of his existence, convincing to our very atoms. Also, in meditation, one finds his instant guidance, his adequate response to every difficulty. Then Yogananda ji says, I see, Guruji, you have solved my problem. I smiled gratefully. I do realize now that I have found God. For whenever the joy of meditation has returned subconsciously during my active hours, I have been subtly directed to adopt the right course in everything, even details. Human life is beset with sorrow until we know how to tune in with the divine will, whose right course is often baffling to the egoistic intelligence. God bears the burden of the cosmos. He alone can give unerring counsel. So let's take a few moments, just for a minute or so. Let's close our eyes and think of maybe two instances or directions, situations in your life where you're seeking clarity, further guidance. Just generally think of two situations. If you want, you can very briefly in a word or two write them down for your own memory and to go deeper into this later. Now pick one of those challenges. Try to keep your likes and dislikes about it, your repulsion or attraction to it, gently aside as much as you can. And think of two possible solutions that will, if not totally solve the problem, it will at least help you move towards greater clarity in solving them. Think of two possible steps. And it's possible that they are both right, because a problem can have multiple solutions. Or it's possible that one is not right at all. So anyway, let's take one of them one by one now and gently project it, or feel that you're like asking it, projecting it from the point between the two eyebrows. Divine Mother or God, in whichever form you see him, talk to him. Should I do this? And then try to feel, after you have ask only once or twice, and then try to feel in your heart. If you get a wave of calmness, make a note of it. And if you feel restless, make a note of it, and you can go in more depth later. So let's do this for option number one. Likewise, now do it for the second option, and you can make a little note of how you're feeling when you're asking these questions. It can be a mental note or on paper. Let's do this for half a minute with the second option. You can gently open your eyes after you're done, and we'll do another very simple practice, which in more detail you can do at home. And this was something, again, Swami Kriyanandaji suggested we do every night before we go to sleep. And he said, out of your love for God, make a bonfire at the point between the two eyebrows. And he said, see the flames burning very joyfully and bringing you joy and release. And he says, then search your heart for anything that's holding you back or that we might be holding back. And he said, then just toss those things, those attachments or what's holding you back, into that fire so you can find instant freedom. So let's again, as we tune into divine will, think of something which you want to accomplish, and then perhaps two or three things that are holding you back. And now, ideally, we do it at the point between the two eyebrows, but we'll do it now a little bit like an outward ceremony. You can open your eyes. We'll rub our hands, and we'll do this 7 times. There's a mantra called Om Swaha, that I, Swaha, offer everything, my karma, attachments, into the fire of freedom. So let's rub our hands and we'll sweep them up the hand 7 times. So let's start. Om Swaha. 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 Keeping the eyes closed, let's feel a sense of expansion in the heart, freedom. greater clarity and joy at the spiritual eye. Let's do this for half a minute. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll invite Kyle to Navana, or maybe you have the printouts with the flow for tomorrow morning. Any thoughts? Yeah.